In 2015, roughly $9,000 could buy a JetSmarter membership. The pitch was almost irresistible. Open an app, claim a seat, and fly private, sometimes with no additional charge for the flight. Then came the names: Jay-Z, Saudi royalty, major investment firms. And in late 2016, JetSmarter announced a $105 million funding round at a reported pre-money valuation of $1.5 billion. Within 3 years, the free flight promise had changed. Customer disputes were piling up, and the JetSmarter name was absorbed into another company. But the app was not the real failure. The real failure was believing software could repeal the economics of an airplane. To understand why JetSmarter looked so brilliant, start with a frustrating fact about private aviation. Airplanes frequently need to move without a paying passenger. A jet may fly a client from New York to Miami, but the next charter begins in Atlanta. The aircraft still has to reposition. That empty segment is called an empty leg. JetSmarter's own marketing claimed that roughly 30% of private aircraft flew empty. To a software entrepreneur, that sounds less like waste and more like inventory. Hotels sell unused rooms, airlines sell unsold seats, Uber matches drivers with riders. Why couldn't an app match travelers with private jets that were already going somewhere? Because an empty leg is not a normal airline seat. It appears in one city, at one time, going in one direction, often because another customer has already dictated the schedule. If that underlying trip changes, the empty leg can change with it. JetSmarter saw the opportunity correctly. It also inherited every constraint hidden inside it. And the person trying to solve that puzzle was not an aviation veteran. He was a young technology founder who believed the industry's friction could be redesigned from a phone. Sergei Petrosov later said the idea began after a private flight in 2009. The aircraft felt modern. The booking process did not. Behind the luxury was an industry still coordinated through brokers, phone calls, emails, and disconnected operator systems. Petrosov's insight was simple. The customer should not need to understand that machinery. The customer should open an app. A beta version emerged in 2012, and JetSmarter launched publicly in 2013. It did not begin by manufacturing aircraft or hiring a national fleet of pilots. It built a digital layer over existing charter operators. That distinction matters. JetSmarter could grow its apparent network without buying thousands of airplanes. Operators supplied the aircraft, crews, maintenance, and regulatory compliance. JetSmarter supplied the interface, customer demand, and, in some cases, committed flight hours intended to make inventory available to members. It was an asset-light idea attached to one of the most asset-heavy industries on Earth. And by 2015, the company had turned that idea into 3 products that made private aviation feel radically simple. JetSmarter's app grouped the experience into 3 main categories. JetCharter let a customer book an entire aircraft, closer to a traditional charter, but through a streamlined digital interface. Jet Deals offered seats tied to one-way or empty leg opportunities. These were the moments when the marketplace could convert otherwise unused capacity into a member benefit. And Jet Shuttle offered seats on scheduled shared flights between popular cities. Instead of chartering the whole aircraft, unrelated travelers could reserve individual seats. That was the breakthrough. JetSmarter was not only digitizing charter, it was unbundling the private jet, selling the seat instead of the whole airplane. In 2015, contemporary reporting put an annual membership near $9,000. JetSmarter marketed qualifying jet deals and shuttle seats as available to members at no additional flight charge, while whole aircraft charters remained separately priced. Fees, initiation charges, routes, and benefits changed over time and by membership tier, but the emotional promise was unmistakable. Pay once. Open the app. Fly private more often. For a traveler accustomed to airport lines, connections, and crowded terminals, that promise did not feel like a small upgrade. It felt like access to a different transportation system. And because each member paid before knowing exactly how much they would fly, the model also resembled a luxury gym membership. Profitability depended on some customers using it far less than the most enthusiastic customers imagined they would. That tension was easy to overlook, especially once famous investors made the company look inevitable. In July 2015, JetSmarter announced a $20 million Series B. The investor story was almost as powerful as the product. Contemporary reports identified Jay-Z, members of the Saudi royal family, executives, and family offices among the backers. JetSmarter's own release named Prince Abdullah bin Bandar bin Abdulaziz Al Saud as a key investor. But the disclosure requires precision. $20 million was the size of the entire Series B, not Jay-Z's personal investment, and not the prince's. Their individual amounts were not publicly disclosed. The names still mattered. Celebrity and royal backing acted as social proof for a product built on exclusivity. If globally recognized people believed in JetSmarter, prospective members could feel they were joining the future of elite travel rather than buying access from an untested startup. Then, the capital accelerated. In December 2016, JetSmarter announced a $105 million Series C at a reported pre-money valuation of $1.5 billion. That valuation was not revenue, profit, or money sitting in a bank account. It was the reported value assigned to the company before the new investment. In 2017, Clearlake Capital led what was described as JetSmarter's first institutional capital round, with Leucadia National participating. The financial terms were not disclosed. The company now had the narrative every startup wants: fast growth, a huge market, famous backers, serious capital, and a product people could demonstrate in seconds. But private aviation does not run on narrative. It runs on crews, maintenance, fuel, positioning, and aircraft time. And every time a member tapped book, the story had to meet the balance sheet. Imagine an operator already needs to reposition an aircraft from Miami to New York. If JetSmarter fills a few seats without changing the route, departure time, crew, or aircraft, that can look like elegant marketplace efficiency. The plane was moving anyway. New passenger revenue or member value rides on top of an existing flight. Now change one condition. A member wants New York to Miami on Friday evening, the same direction and time many other people want to travel. There may be no convenient empty aircraft going that way. To keep the app's promise, the platform needs dependable supply. That can mean committing to flight hours, scheduling a shuttle, or paying an operator to make capacity available. Suddenly, the platform is no longer just selling waste, it is purchasing reliability. And reliability in aviation is expensive. The aircraft must be available. 2 qualified pilots may need to be positioned. Maintenance cannot be deferred because an app shows demand. Weather can change the trip. Airport slots, parking, duty time limits, catering, baggage, and ground handling all remain real. If the airplane flies out full but must return nearly empty, the economics do not disappear on the return leg. JetSmarter did not own the fleet, which reduced the capital required to expand, but it also meant the company could not command aircraft supply like Uber could recruit another nearby driver. Every flight involved an operator with its own costs, schedule, safety duties, and commercial priorities. The membership model added another mismatch. Revenue arrived as a mostly fixed annual fee. Usage did not. A member who flew twice could be profitable. A member who found and booked every valuable seat could consume far more service. Raise the price, and growth could slow. Restrict availability, add charges, or change routes, and the product could stop feeling unlimited. Subsidize the experience, and rapid growth could increase the cash required to sustain it. This is the trap at the center of the story. JetSmarter was trying to make supply feel consistent to the customer, even though the underlying supply was irregular. The more successfully it sold that consistency, the more expensive consistency could become. That does not mean every route lost money, or that every member was unprofitable. JetSmarter did not publish enough route-level data to make that claim responsibly. It means the incentives were dangerous. The most attractive version of the product could also be the hardest version to sustain. In late 2016, the founders said shuttle flights were running at roughly 90% capacity and that the network had eliminated deadhead legs within its shuttle system. Those were company claims, not public audited route economics. And the numbers the public could see were about to get very large. For a time, JetSmarter's visible growth made the model look validated. In early 2016, the company said its app had been downloaded more than 350,000 times and that it was growing between 15% and 20% per month. By the 2019 acquisition announcement, the platform was credited with more than 2 million downloads. But downloads are not paying members. Members are not flights. Flights are not profit. Each number measures a different part of the funnel, and startup stories often become most persuasive when those distinctions blur. JetSmarter expanded routes across the United States, Europe, and the Middle East. The network looked larger. The app looked more useful. More travelers could imagine the service becoming a permanent layer of global transportation. Scale could help. More members create more demand data. More operators create more possible matches. More routes create more reasons to join. But scale could also amplify the imbalance. Popular departures clustered at the same times. Empty legs remained dependent on other customers' movements. And a premium member did not buy a statistical chance of finding a flight. That member bought an expectation. This is where marketplace growth and customer trust began pulling in opposite directions. Investors rewarded expansion. Members rewarded dependable access. The aircraft network could not always provide both at the price the original promise implied. So the company began changing the product. And when a membership is sold as access, changing access changes the thing the customer believes they bought. By 2018, JetSmarter was promoting a pay-as-you-go option that did not require membership. On paper, that could broaden the market and align payment more closely with each trip. To longtime members, however, the larger issue was what happened to the benefits they believed they had already purchased. In lawsuits, former members alleged that no additional charge flights were reduced or removed, new fees appeared, routes changed, and refund requests were denied. Some said they had renewed after being told that core services would continue. Those are allegations, not court findings. JetSmarter disputed the claims and relied on the membership terms, including arbitration provisions accepted through its digital enrollment process. Federal courts repeatedly sent member disputes to arbitration. Those rulings decided where the disputes had to be heard. They did not decide whether every underlying customer allegation was true. The legal distinction matters. So does the business lesson. A luxury membership is built on more than transportation. It is built on confidence. Members pay in advance because they trust that future access will resemble the access being advertised today. Once the offer changes, the company faces a brutal choice. Honor an expensive promise and continue absorbing the economics. Reduce the benefits and damage trust. Add per-flight charges and admit that the original fixed-fee model could not reliably cover the service customers wanted. The move toward pay-as-you-go was economically understandable. It was also a retreat from the idea that had made JetSmarter famous. The Uber for private jets comparison had always been imperfect. Uber generally charges each time a rider uses the network. JetSmarter's most magnetic promise encouraged members to think the major payment happened before the flight. One platform monetized usage, the other risked subsidizing it. By this point, JetSmarter still had valuable technology, operator relationships, customer data, and a recognizable brand. What it no longer had was an easy way to preserve both the original promise and the economics beneath it. The solution would not be another membership tier. It would be an acquisition. In April 2019, Vista Global announced an agreement to acquire JetSmarter. The transaction terms were not disclosed. Vista already controlled private aviation businesses, including VistaJet and XOJet. What JetSmarter brought was the digital marketplace, an app, a customer base, and technology designed to connect travelers, operators, and available aircraft. Within months, Vista launched XO, combining JetSmarter's technology with its broader aviation network. The JetSmarter name faded, but the underlying idea did not. That is why calling JetSmarter a simple failure misses half the story. The company helped prove that private aviation could be searched, compared, booked, and shared through a consumer-facing platform. It helped normalize the idea that a traveler might buy a seat rather than an entire aircraft. And its technology became part of a marketplace that continued after the brand was gone. What did not survive was the cleanest version of the promise: pay a membership, tap an app, and make private flying feel unlimited. The interface was scalable. The aircraft economics were not. JetSmarter's rise and fall was not a story about people refusing to fly private. Demand was real. It was a story about confusing available capacity with dependable capacity. An empty seat has value only when the aircraft, route, timing, crew, and traveler align. Software can reveal that opportunity. It can reduce friction. It can improve matching. It can even create entirely new buying behavior. But software cannot make two pilots, a maintained aircraft, and thousands of pounds of fuel appear at zero marginal cost. It cannot make Friday night demand flow evenly in both directions, and it cannot change a premium customer's expectation after the membership has been sold without risking trust. JetSmarter was early. It was ambitious, and parts of it were genuinely transformative. Its mistake was not trying to build a marketplace for private aviation. Its mistake was packaging a volatile marketplace like a predictable subscription. That is the paradox of JetSmarter. The company disappeared because it could not sustain the fantasy, while the industry kept building on the technology underneath it. If you want more deeply researched stories about the business, technology, and hidden economics of private aviation, subscribe to The Empty Leg. Because the most interesting part of a private flight is often the part the passenger never sees.